Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 9th Annual WaterSmart Innovations Conference. My name is Doug Bennett. I'm the Conservation Manager for the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and I want to welcome you today to Las Vegas, Nevada. So this is North America's driest city. I can't think of a better place to have a water efficiency conference. Nothing makes us happier than hosting you here every year for the past 9 years. So it's great to see all of you here today. On behalf of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, I'm really pleased to introduce our first speaker this morning. Congresswoman Dina Titus has been a strong supporter of water issues, both in the state of Nevada and as a congresswoman from the 1st Congressional District. And she has a long history of service. I think you're going to note when Congresswoman Titus takes the stage that she deep down is a Georgia girl. And she's got the accent to prove it. But I tell you, through and through, Nevada is what runs through her veins. She's been here for many years and has a long history of service. For the past 30 years, she's been an instructor with University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And we're going to be very excited to host the presidential debate later this month. For 20 years, she's been an assembly person for the state of Nevada, been a strong champion for the rights of children, seniors, and people with disabilities. And she is now in her 3rd term in Congress representing our 1st Congressional District. And this audience will love the fact that Dina Titus has been an extremely strong supporter of the WaterSense program, working to get funding for that program. And another issue near and dear to all of us, so many of you may know that the agencies have struggled with this issue, that when we give a rebate to a homeowner or business for a water efficiency measure, in many cases, it's not clear whether that person may have to pay federal tax on that rebate. So we're asking them to do the right thing, and then they're getting part of their check taken away because they're not tax exempt. And Dina Titus has also supported legislation to get us that tax exemption so that when people get these water efficiency rebates, they're getting to keep the entire rebate toward their project versus paying some of it back as federal taxes. So, thank you. Y'all, please give a warm welcome to Congresswoman Dina Titus. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Doug, but now I just say I'm from Southern Nevada, and that takes care of the problem. Thank you all for being here. This is very exciting, and as Doug said, I can't think of a better place to have a water conference than here in the desert in a city like Las Vegas. We're the sunniest part of the country, but we're also one of the driest, and so it makes a lot of sense to talk about water efficiency, conservation, and development of strategies to deal with those challenges, and you are certainly the experts to help us do that. I want to thank Doug, too, because this is the 9th, you heard him say, the 9th conference. Look how it's grown. We've got people here from all over the West and internationally, I understand. So welcome, and thank you and the Southern Nevada Water District for your vision of putting this conference together and seeing how it's grown over the years and how it has contributed to the conversation about what our challenges are and how we should deal with them. You know, in 1931, Las Vegas had about, a couple of thousand people, maybe 5,000 people. Then they built the dam, and suddenly we began to grow into a city. But who could imagine when all that water was being allocated, what Las Vegas would look like today and what its needs would be? You know, we have almost 2 million people who live here, and we welcome about 42 million people every year as visitors, as tourists, as conventioneers. So that's quite a lot of people to accommodate with a shrinking source of water. So what you come up with will certainly be important, not only to our livelihood, to our quality of life, but certainly to our economic development. Now, you are on the ground here. You are with water authorities, conservation groups, businesses that are concerned about sustainability. I'm in Congress. Now, I think we have an approval rating of about 9%. That includes my mother, who thinks I'm doing a good job, but not too many other people think that that's the case. We ended, of course, last Friday, after not doing very much. We at least did pass the WRDA bill. Now, that doesn't have a lot to do with Nevada. Those are mostly regional projects that the Corps is involved in. But a few things dealing with the quagga mussels and the invasive species could have some impact on us. I also would say that, unfortunately, we did not fund any kind of project to deal with the Flint water crisis. The Senate did, but the House didn't. So the compromise was just an authorization for funding for a community that has been declared a crisis. Now, that's kind of an earmark by any other name, but the money was not there. Now, while Flint is a crisis, the infrastructure all around the country is in dire need of fixing. Not so bad in the west as in the east because our pipes are newer, but certainly there are challenges. So it's unfortunate that we didn't look at that infrastructure problem with a broader brush maybe and with some future considerations in mind. But at least there's a little attempt to maybe, hopefully, if they come through with the money, deal with the Flint issue. I serve on the Water Subcommittee of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and so I'm pleased to work with you all on any kind of water projects that come through that committee. You heard some of the things mentioned earlier that have been priorities, I think, of yours as well as of mine. I've also formed with a Republican, yes, you can work across the aisle despite what many people think, to create an infrastructure caucus. Now, that's an attempt to just make infrastructure a priority for our colleagues because, you know, you can talk about it, but sometimes people think that just means roads and bridges, where it also could mean major water projects as well. So we hope to use that to bring in speakers, to work with you all to try to make infrastructure a priority going into the next Congress. I would just mention, too, that I was pleased to work with you on the pilot project. A number of you from states bordering Nevada are part of that pilot project to look at conservation of the Colorado River. We got about $3 million for the project last year and another $3 million this year. So I think that maybe some good will come out of that as we look at how to conserve water coming out of the Colorado River. So count on me as a friend and an advocate, and I value your wise counsel as we move forward and try to address the issues related to water, which is what sustains us all. It's also now my pleasure to turn this over to a real expert, someone who is well known for his expertise in water planning, water development, involved in water both as a scholar and as a practitioner, and this is Mr. Paul Brown. Let me just give you some of his credentials because they're most impressive. He's been in this business for 40 years. He ought to know what he's doing, I would say. He's dedicated his professional life to technological innovation and active resource management. He's a former board member for global engineering firm CDM Smith. He is a fellow with the International Water Association, where he spearheaded the very exciting Cities of the Future program. He also co-authored the book Water-Centric Sustainable Communities that's focused largely on the issues that you are tackling here at your WaterSmart conference. It's how to refit existing cities so they can be more water efficient and how to build cities of the future so they put that in place from the very beginning. I know it'll be interesting to hear him, and so help me welcome Mr. Brown.
That's the best introduction I have ever had. I am so pleased and honored to be here today. And I have to say this is my third time at this conference. I was here in 2010 as an executive at CDM Smith, and as has been mentioned, a chair of IWA Cities of the Future program, and again in 2013 as a visiting professor from the University of South Florida's Patel College of Global Sustainability. Today I'm here as the owner of my own firm, currently providing program management for a 150 million gallon per day regional recycled water project being evaluated by the Metropolitan Water District and the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. It would provide purified water for recharging Southern California's groundwater basins. It's a great assignment, and it shows how challenging it can be to repurpose our urban water infrastructure on a very big scale. Now, of course, you know everything doesn't happen at a big scale. In fact, some of the most important changes we've experienced in Southern California over the last several years have happened at the individual, neighborhood, and community scale, where conservation measures, evolving societal norms like turf isn't stylish, and changes in personal behavior have saved us from the worst of the current drought. And while I've been working for Metropolitan and the sanitation districts, I've also had a chance to volunteer with groups like the Council for Watershed Health and Water LA, both of which are actively pursuing fundamental bottom-up change. The micro-technologies that, if deployed on a citywide scale, could dramatically change the fabric of urban water infrastructure and the role of individual citizens in its quality and maintenance. This personal experience reflects innovation happening at two very different scales. The essential repurposing of large-scale centralized infrastructure on the one hand, and the micro-scale reinvention of urban landscape, stormwater management, and the built environment, one tiny change at a time on the other. Frankly, it reminds me of the dilemma posed by Dr. Seuss in the children's book, Horton Hears a Who. How many people here are familiar with that book? Well, that tells me a lot about the demographics of the group. Where a sensitive elephant struggles to save the community of Whoville, which is located on a small speck of dust, balanced precariously on a clover, held at the end of his trunk. So my question to you this morning is the following. Can we span this apparent divide between the large-scale top-down and the micro-scale bottom-up worlds of innovation to arrive at a more unified vision of adaptation and change? And can we speed up the adoption of both the top-down and the bottom-up simultaneously? First, let me provide a definition of innovation, which I've taken from a book entitled The Innovator's Way: Essential Practices for Innovation, written by Peter Denning and Robert Dunham. They state, and I'll quote, "Most thinking about innovation is dominated by invention. To many, it seems that most innovations begin with a clever invention. It seems that to strengthen our ability to innovate, we need to strengthen our inventiveness by fostering climates in which creative, imaginative thinking can flourish." What if the supposition that invention causes innovation is wrong? What if our low innovation success rate is tied to our lack of clear distinction between invention and innovation. Since the acid test of innovation is adoption, we have defined innovation as, quote, new practice adopted by a community. Now, that definition resonates with me because I feel that we have been witnessing the rapid development of technological inventions in water for some time. And the availability of new technologies is not the central problem confronting us. Rather, it's the slow adoption of these technologies that stands as our biggest challenge. And so I want to focus on the adoption of new practices and what we can do to accelerate that process. So, going back to my two questions. Yes, I believe we can develop a unified vision of top-down and bottom-up activities that currently coexist in our urban water management world. And I also believe we can speed up the adoption of new practices at both scales, but it will require at least 3 significant changes in how we view water management and the processes that generate and regenerate urban infrastructure. So the first relates to competition and what I'll call the optimization trap. It involves relaxing an expectation that everything we do must fit neatly into a top-down structure of cost-effective, prioritized capital planning, resulting in a series of perfectly synchronized investments. The second relates to standardization, regulations, and other institutional barriers to change. They all derive from important public health and environmental protection goals, but they can present real impediments to innovation in our industry. And finally, I want to close on a less obvious requirement: the re-engagement of individual citizens to the process, the reconnecting of people, including ourselves as water users, to the technologies we have been kept apart from for decades. Now, let me talk about each one of these separately, and let me start with competition and the optimization trap. Now, when I use the words optimization trap, I'm defining them as follows. 1, the belief that every solution to a problem can be optimized. And 2, no action should be taken until it has been. But I'll come back to that. As we know, our industry is comprised of many communities advocating for solutions that function within overlapping but largely discrete market sectors that may appear at times to compete with one another. And certainly within the context of large utility and governmental budgetary processes, they do compete for policy priority and public funding. There are obvious constraints on top-down funding that force us to make choices. And the need to make choices forces us to compete with one another, often forcing decisions and debates on choices as disparate as an elephant versus a speck of dust, where, recall, the entire community of Whoville resides. Of competition is no doubt a catalyst for innovation and change. But when it appears to be a zero-sum game, that sense of competition and win-lose outcomes may exhaust our capacity to collaborate at a higher level and achieve more rapid adoption of the innovations we are all attempting to promote. How did we get to this point? As a nation, we have been on a long, often reactive path towards top-down, large-scale infrastructure since the 19th century and before. In his often quoted speech at the Sorbonne in 1910, where he lauded the individual citizen as the foundation of a successful republic, President Theodore Roosevelt specifically singled out water supply and drainage as examples of societal problems best solved by government. And I'll quote from that speech, not the quote you're used to. Individual initiative, so far from being discouraged, should be stimulated. And yet, we should remember that as a society develops and grows more complex, we continually find that things which once it was desirable to leave to individual initiative can, under changed conditions, be performed with better results by common effort. For instance, when people live on isolated farms or in little hamlets, each house can be left to attend to its own drainage and water supply. But the mere multiplication of families in a given area produces new problems, which, because they differ in size, are found to differ not only in degree, but in kind from the old. And the questions of drainage and water supply have to be considered from the common standpoint. Addressing issues like water supply and drainage from the common standpoint resulted in the formation of top-down, functional bureaucracies that remain the primary approach taken by municipal utilities, both large and small, to this day. And with it came a long tradition of what could be described as utility invisibility. We'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. Just pay your water bill. And for many of us living in urban settings, no individual initiative was called for at all. We were separated from the technology and the natural systems that had for centuries been a daily worry, and for most of the world's population still is. We could easily assert that today's conditions justify an equally compelling argument that the future of water supply and drainage demands that we invite individuals back into the process, empower them to employ technology, and drive changes in values and behavior to reduce the burden on large-scale centralized infrastructure, and at the same time enlist their help as we repurpose, replumb, and restore the integrity of those large investments we have already made wherever possible. I don't think that enforcing the false choices that competition creates will result in rapid progress on either front. So, as I was thinking about our top-down versus bottom-up innovation question, my search took me to a recently published book by two researchers at the MIT Sensible City Laboratory named Carlo Ratti and Matthew Claudel, entitled The City of Tomorrow. I like the title right off the bat. Sensors, Networks, Hackers, and the Future of Urban Life. And they took up this question head on. Quote, a merger of top-down and bottom-up systems can invite widespread engagement and mean effective implementation of solutions, ideally resulting in livable urban spaces. Pure optimization quickly becomes obsolete, but a hybrid model with a measure of chaos may be a more sustainable form of efficiency. Pure optimization quickly becomes obsolete and invites a measure of chaos as a means of achieving sustainability more efficiently. They go on to say, allowing citizen participation requires vulnerability, slackened control, and possibility of failure. But if hacking catches on, the productive integration of top-down and bottom-up urban paradigms may yet realize tomorrow's city. Is this an optimal expenditure of public funds? Well, there is no optimal. And frankly, if that question seems sensible to you, you may already be caught in that optimization trap. Realizing tomorrow's city presents so-called wicked problems. That is, problems that, quote, defy complete definition, since the resolution generates further issues, and where solutions are not true or false or good or bad, but the best that can be done at the time. And there is no such thing as optimal solutions to wicked problems. Local engagement should be encouraged and understood to be intrinsically chaotic, but fundamental to shaping sustainable urban environments. Optimization, which is enormously useful in the design of mechanical systems, requires a finite number of known variables with sufficient stationarity to allow for reasonable forecasts of their future behavior. Of course, in the water management arena, stationarity, at least as it applies to expected future weather conditions, has been pronounced dead. And consequently, we should be a little suspect when it comes to relying upon the long-term forecasts that generally support our decision-making and optimization analyses. Picking winners and losers is much harder to do these days, so why do we keep doing it? Well, often we experience the effects of a binary win-lose world because most of what we do in the world of water, nearly everything in fact, functions within a highly standardized structure of laws, regulations, rules, ordinances, and licensing requirements. And this brings me to my second topic, standardization as a barrier to innovation. Of course, we're part of an industry that is already conservative and deliberately skeptical in its adoption of institutional, technological, and regulatory innovations. Our codes and standards provide strict templates of how things should be done for the protection of public and environmental health and safety. It's a triumph of progressive era and mid-20th century reforms and responses to the destructive aspects of the Industrial Revolution. It has produced amazing benefits for those within its purview, and for most of the world, it stands as an aspirational vision of what the future should, could look like. And while it has within it processes for amendments and revisions, those processes are purposely designed to work slowly and deliberately. Now, in that context, since it's likely we cannot and probably should not speed that process up too much, then we must consider embarking on more new innovation initiatives simultaneously, encouraging apparently redundant efforts to accelerate adoption in the hopes of producing sufficient numbers of acknowledged successes to meet our needs, investing in many real options to deal with a deeply uncertain future. It's not the optimal solution. It's the optimist's solution. Someone who believes that the transformational power of disruptive innovations can make great change when they're allowed to exist. To do that, we need a bottom-up revolution that will generate countless examples of successes and failures, hopefully at a rate that keeps pace with the unfolding challenges ahead of us. So let me close this topic with a quote from the Global Risks Report 2016, published by the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness and Risks team. Quote, "The increasing volatility, complexity, and ambiguity of the world not only heightens uncertainty around the which, when, where, and who of addressing global risks, but it also clouds the solutions space. We need clear thinking about new levers that will enable a wide range of stakeholders to jointly address global risks which cannot be dealt with in a centralized way. And that brings me to my final topic, re-engagement of individual citizens. We cannot afford to be spectators. We must be in the arena. We must care about what we're doing. And this subtle concept that tries to bridge the separation between the technology and the individual has been expressed in many different ways. Marshall McLuhan, referring to Buckminster Fuller's 1963 book, Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth, stated it this way: "There are no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We are all crew." And his brilliant book, devoted entirely to this topic, entitled Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Robert M. Pirsig has documented an extraordinary personal and philosophical journey exploring a relationship with technology. Let me do this same survey again. How many people know that book, Zen and the Art of... Okay, so now I've divided the room into the young and the old. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. An older person was offended by that remark. To the baby boomers and the millennials. How's that sound? This story starts on a cross-country road trip with Pirsig and his son Chris on one motorcycle and two friends, John and Sylvia Sutherland, on another. The narrative quickly focuses in on the differences Pirsig sees between John's relationship with his motorcycle and his own. Pirsig and his motorcycle are essentially self-sufficient, except for the occasional parts, and some of those Pirsig has learned to mill himself. John, on the other hand, won't touch a motorcycle except as his rider. John relies entirely on paid mechanics. Every one of Pirsig's experiences with so-called mechanics seems to make things worse. And after seeing his motorcycle inadvertently damaged in the shop, Pirsig reflected on the failings of those mechanics. Quote, "At 5 p.m., or whenever their 8 hours were in, you knew they would cut it off and not have another thought about their work on the job. In their own way, they were achieving the same thing John and Sylvia were, living with technology without having anything to do with it. Or rather, they had something to do with it, but their own selves were outside of it, detached, removed. They were involved in it, but not in such a way as to care. These ideas of quality, being crew, of caring, and having an engaged relationship with technology and natural systems are sometimes hard to find among the users of our water products and services. It may be easier to spot in smartphones and even solar panels, which are ubiquitous, sewn into the fabric of our lives in new and obvious ways. Our water management solutions, however, are designed to be invisible, taken for granted, underground and behind walls. Now, I saw a cartoon recently that depicted this point very succinctly. You may have seen it yourself. Below a hand-drawn heading that read, "How we get water in our homes," it presented a sketchy illustration of a cloud with rain streaming down on the far left side. I trust this is your left. And a tap with water running from it on the right side. And in the middle, Drawn with a crude dashed line was a large empty box with a note attached stating, "I don't have any information on this bit." I would argue most people don't want any information on that bit between falling rain and the tap. And for decades, we've worked hard to keep it that way. The solutions that have the greatest potential of making us sustainable are the ones that reconnect people, all people, with the natural and technological systems that sustain everyone, not just as spectators, free riders on this spaceship, but caring, engaged participants in the real business of living on a blue planet. That means better apps, more sensors, greater dependence on crowdsourced solutions, smaller, more intimate infrastructure that is outside your back door and beside your porch. Knowingly using water that might have passed through your plumbing once before, that you understand the source of, the value of, and the personal importance of every single day. We are among the few people on earth that have the luxury of living with this totally detached relationship to water, and have accepted the notion that everybody deserves to be detached like us. That is wrong. We're all crew. We all need to care about the resources we employ because, as Buckminster Fuller noted in his operating manual for Spaceship Earth, no instruction book came with it. Now, as you all know, it goes well beyond seeing things in terms of demand management, which is an expression that reflects the perspective of a large utility manager. When I am removing my lawn and adding solar panels to my home, my purpose is to provide for my own well-being, not eliminate my demands on the power grid or various water utilities. I am doing something affirmative. I am engaging with technologies, not withdrawing my demands. I am making change happen, not making something go away. And finally, think of your own role and how you make change happen. Do you spend too much time on advocacy related to your invention, your new idea, your specialized technology, your better solution? Can we all spend more time working with each other? Yes, with our competitors, focused on the adoption of the enabling changes that could open doors to many new ideas, better solutions, and broad community transformations. That means all of us supporting each other. It's not an either-or proposition. We've seen it happen during and in the aftermath of disasters. The coming together around recovery and restoration of broken communities and failed infrastructure. What we put back is generally different from what preceded it, and in emergencies we are often at our best. We're in an emergency now. Draw energy and renewed commitment from your colleagues and go home with increased confidence in and passion for the imperative to get things done, even if those things don't appear to fit neatly into the master plans and capital budgets of your respective organizations and employers. Be catalysts for change and the limitless possibilities that can derive from creative collaboration. Don't be content to wait in the wings. Be center stage, even if you must erect that platform yourself. Remember, it's not just the scale of the fix that matters, it's the number of times it's repeated. when every single citizen of Whoville spoke up, even the skeptical beasts in the jungle listened and paid attention. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Paul. You know, I got to tell you guys, I'm sorry. Paul told us he was a water engineer, and I had no idea I was going to bring up all this stuff about human engagement, failure, risk-taking, throwing yourself out there, trying different things. I don't know what happened. Seriously, Paul, I couldn't ask for a better message because that's really what we're here for. And oddly, I would say that Paul and I just spoke this morning about the rest of the agenda. And Paul's been to this conference several times, but I just went through what the mission of this conference was this morning with Paul. And Paul did not read this mission statement in preparing his comments this morning, and I hadn't seen them prior to his presentation. But he literally echoed exactly why we're all here. And I think it was a perfect fit. So the mission of this conference, for those of you who have never been here or maybe have forgotten, is we are trying to accelerate the development and adoption of water-efficient programs, policies, and products. The technology is out there, the know-how is out there. We're not moving fast enough. And in many cases, we're not moving fast enough because of the perceived barriers, because of our adversity to risk, because we're not always listening to others. And so that's an important thing to do here, and that's why it's so great that we have so much diversity in this event. This conference started 9 years ago. Actually, it had its roots even earlier than that, but it's not for profit. We've been charging the same price to come to this event for 9 years. And whenever this event makes money, we reinvest it back into this event. So occasionally we come out with a 10% revenues exceeding what our actual costs are. So we created a scholarship program to bring water resources graduate students into the program so we could get newer, fresher ideas and perspectives. It's interdisciplinary. So once upon a time, we used to get together a bunch of water people. Me, Mary Ann, a number of you guys, 35 of us in a room, and we would talk to each other about what we were doing. But truly, we needed to talk to a lot of other people because that's what makes this happen. So we have people out here that are sustainability professionals for corporations, the people that invent the products that we want to promote. There's so many ideas out there, and as Paul said, we need to engage with those people. Not just be married to our perspective, but hear others' perspective, because that's how it gets done. This is a very dynamic event. How many of you, raise your hand if you've never been to this before? Wow. So I guess the people who have been here before, about half of you are new attendees. The other half said, I'm going to sleep in. No, I don't know what they did. This is a dynamic venue because we have 8 continuous tracks. And in fact, one of the complaints we get is that people will have 3 things happening simultaneously they want to see, and every 30 minutes, everybody's rushing out of the rooms and rushing back into the other rooms. And you're going to find it's very fast-paced. Pow, pow, pow. It's like a chicken popping bubble wrap. It's affordable. Like I said, we want to keep this affordable. And one reason it's affordable is it's always in Las Vegas. And you may wonder, why hasn't this come to my state? Well, it's hosted by the Southern Nevada Water Authority. We put about $100,000 worth of in-kind resources into planning it, hosting it. All the folks that you see in blue shirts, we switched to blue this year. Most of them work for the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and they're here to help you, so call on them for anything. And lastly, we try to keep it accessible. Not everybody could come, and there were many years where even some of you couldn't come to this event because of the economic downturn or the perception that Las Vegas was just, you were just going to run around like a crazed person and dance on tables. We do that at night, okay? But we keep it accessible because every single presentation, more than 100 of them, and over the past 9 years, there will now be almost 1,000 of them will be posted on our website. So if you missed something, go look it up later. You'll get to see the slides. You'll have contact information. You can get in touch with them. So we're trying to make sure that everybody who needs this information can get it, whether they're here or not. So now I'm going to go over just some housekeeping so you know what to expect. So today is Wednesday. When we leave here, we're going to go to the Exposition. If you've been to the Exposition, now this is Las Vegas. These facilities are gigantic. And I got so tired of hearing the complaint about the distance between the educational venue and the expo hall. It is, you go down the escalators, you have a statue of a cowboy, you hang a right, and you go about 75 yards down a hallway, and you go up another set of escalators. And I have to tell you, I'm so disappointed. They are putting in a dang people mover in that hallway. And you know what that means? That means that our 10th anniversary, that a bunch of you are going to be standing on that damn motorized belt doing this for 75 yards. Get the exercise. Walk it. You'll be fine. At 11 o'clock, the poster session opens, and a lot of people want to speak at WaterSmart. We only have so many slots. We think it's all worthy content, so please join these presenters in the hall. Look at their posters. I think some of the most amazing things are going on, and we just simply don't have room for everybody to speak at a podium. At 1 o'clock, we go back to work. Work, 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 and you start running around from session to session. Tonight, because we expect you to work here, we don't want this to be a fluffy trip to Las Vegas. We work in the day, but we do want you to have fun and socialize in the evening. This year, we've added another bus route. So one of the buses will take you to the heart of the Strip, drop you off, you do whatever you want to do. The bus will be picking you up. The schedule is inside your program. But we also added, for those of you that are lower key, we added a place called Town Square. Town Square is not far from here. Town Square is full of restaurants, movie theaters, pubs, bars, stores. So if the Strip is not for you, I encourage you to go to Town Square, some fabulous restaurants, some wonderful beer pubs and so forth. It's a nice lower key place to hang out. On Thursday, of course, we're going to wake up. You'll find coffee here somewhere. We're going to work starting at 9:30 a.m., and then at noon, we're going to appreciate those who've done some worthy work in the WaterSense program with the WaterSense Awards Luncheon. And then at 4:45, we'll be back in the exhibit hall, and our friends at Smart Utility Systems will wet our whistles. So there will be socializing in the exhibit hall. And then at 6 p.m. again, those same bus routes will run on Thursday evening. Friday morning, have some coffee. We go to work at 9 a.m. Friday's a little different because we know that a lot of you are going to leave on Friday. So we actually wind up with a smaller population. This is where we put some of the longer presentations, panel discussions, more in-depth things, maybe a more in-depth view of some research going on that's important, that simply merited having more than 25 minutes to present. So Friday has a little bit different vibe to it. And lastly, Friday is the day where we have our technical tours. We have 4 technical tours, and I think most of them are sold out. But let me tell you that in many cases, people who have purchased these tours may not be able to attend. So if you want to attend one of these tours, please visit the registration desk, and they will put you on a wait list, and you'll be notified if somebody else's seat becomes available on that tour. One that I want to encourage you to look at that we have the potential to expand is the Springs Preserve. And the Springs Preserve, surprisingly, gets the lowest demand, and yet, in my opinion, it is one of the most fascinating facilities. It is approximately 200 acres in the heart of this city that really is the birthplace of the water systems that made Las Vegas possible. And you'll learn a lot about sustainable practices. You get to see some beautiful water-efficient gardens, a really terrific place. I encourage you to participate in that. And lastly, if you can't get enough of this place, we've been working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, MGM, and other stakeholders in Las Vegas, and they will be hosting the Business H2O conference here in December. And we're going to leave this information up on the screen. If that's something you'd like to attend, please visit their website. We'd love to have you back again in our town. So have a great conference, and we'll see you in the exhibit hall.